services, especially I just heard, Dawn, when you talked about your dad, we have a hero care network through our services to the armed forces that he may be able to benefit from. So I just really want you to walk away today understanding better what we do, how we work in our community and beyond, and the things that you can do to share to make our community safer and provide support for those who need it. Our main way that we provide all of our services are through our volunteers. So this slide has several of our volunteers throughout our Central and Southeastern Washington chapter. One of the things I want to highlight is right in the center, you'll see the Coca-Cola picture, and right below that is a gentleman at the back of his car. This is Paul. He's one of our blood transport specialists. That's what he does all day long, is transport blood for us. And he actually delivered the very first convalescent plasma in Washington State and for our region, and ended up making it to the, let's shut that off, to the Times Square billboard. So that's pretty exciting for us here in Washington State. We were a big part of that push for convalescent plasma treatment. Our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in emergencies, and we do that by volunteers and our donors. And I really want to stress one thing, is the number 90. If you remember the number 90 for the Red Cross, we are 90% volunteer workforce, and 90%, 90 cents of every dollar goes back to the programs. So we're really proud of that number, and we really rely on our volunteers for the work that we do. A lot of people know the Red Cross for disaster services, home fires, blood. These are actually all the lines of service that we have. Disaster cycle services is going to be those wildfires, the flooding, any kind of disasters that are the large disaster, tornadoes, all of the storms that you see across the country. Those are our disaster cycle services. The home fire campaign is around those home fires that we respond to here in our community, structure fires, home fires. Sometimes it's motorhomes, cars. So when we get called out to support someone who has been a victim of a fire that is not disaster related. The biomedical services are blood donations. We provide 40% of the nation's blood. So ongoing blood donations are really important, and blood cannot be manufactured. So we have to consistently project how much blood we need to collect. And then those transport specialists, those volunteers, get the blood out to the hospitals. Services to the armed forces is an area that I think a lot of people aren't aware here in the Tri-Cities. We're so grateful to have Joe have joined us recently. He's going to be a leader in this area, and we're excited about making sure that people here, the veterans here, military families, know this support that's available. We'll go into that a little bit further. International services are our support to international disasters, but also around vaccines and the creation of vaccines. And I know Rotary has a big part of that work. And then training services are going to be the life-saving courses, CPRs, first aid, all of those training to help save lives, whether someone needs a certification or not. Let's go here. This photo was taken in Yakima back at the beginning of September. The Washington wildfires actually began in Yakima with Evans Canyon, and we had responded to that. We had several volunteers from here in the Tri-Cities that went over to Yakima to help families that were displaced. If you just can see the sky back there, and that was at the hotel shelter. So it was pretty bad. I know that we had the effects of that here, and then that wildfire there, then it's like the whole state of Washington caught on fire, Oregon, California. So the Washington wildfires then for us became West Coast wildfires. It was the largest disaster really in the history of the Red Cross to be doing that all at one time. But the Red Cross meets the immediate needs. So that's the food and the shelter. When someone is displaced, we want to make sure that they have shelter or they have what those immediate needs are. That could be making sure that they have the prescriptions they need, the eyeglasses they need, just helping them to address what those immediate needs are. And then through recovery, helping provide cleanup supplies, comfort items, and just help to put their lives back together. This is a pretty staggering statistic. 7 people die in a U.S. home fire daily. In a conference I attended, they shared that more people felt that they would win the lottery than experience a home fire. So one of the big pieces is educating people on home fires, the risks of home fire, but also making sure that they have working smoke alarms and an escape plan. Those are the best ways to be able to survive a home fire disaster. Most times you have 2 minutes to safely get out of a home for a home fire. And so the Red Cross launched Sound the Alarm campaign back in 2014. That's what we're currently in the midst of. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But to date, because of being able to install those smoke alarms, we've made more than 900,000 homes safer. And there are 830 documented lives that have been saved because of smoke alarms that the Red Cross actually installed. So we can tie that work directly back to our home fire campaign and Sound the Alarm. Since January 1st, I have both our regional and our local chapter numbers here. Just since January 1st, we have helped 700 people. This is just to home fires. This is not counting disaster numbers. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if someone had a question there. So with financial assistance, recovery planning, here in the Central and Southeastern Washington chapter, we've responded to 28 home fires and we provided aid to 125 individuals. We don't respond to every fire. The Red Cross is called either by the fire department. At the time, they will always offer a family if they would like the Red Cross to be called. Sometimes people in the midst of it just think they don't need help, and so they decline, but then we will hear from them, a day or two afterwards, and we're there to help provide them support. And that Sandy, who is on the call, is one of our disaster action team responders, and Sandy does respond and help a lot of those families. So if there's any questions around that when we get to the end, Sandy can definitely help with that. The Sound the Alarm campaign right now is our most important campaign. We are actually offering virtual sessions. People sign up for this. I'm going to provide that information. We're going to go through with families on just going through a checklist. It's here, a safety checklist of your home. Best practices, we're going to have you check your smoke alarms. If you have non-working smoke alarms or they're outdated, we're going to get you on a list and schedule for the fire department to come in and install. Because of COVID, we're unable to do installations right now, but we are working with our local fire departments to get those installed into homes. We're going to help families create an escape plan. You want to make sure that you, especially if you have young children in the house, you want to know you have 2 exits out of every room. And you want to make sure that kids understand that because they tend to hide under beds, in closets during a fire, to understand that they need to get out and stay out, and to practice that drill. And then they'll also talk about local hazards. For us, that's wildfires. For our residents down in California, they talk about wildfires and earthquakes. So that is free, and that's going to be available to everybody. And like I said, I will provide the link to where anybody can sign up for that virtual call. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. The other big piece that we do is blood collection. Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood. We're actually unique in our chapter because we have 2 blood centers. We have one in Richland, and then we have one in Yakima. We usually collect blood at those fixed sites, we call them, but we also do a lot of our work out in the community with mobile drives. A lot of churches, workplaces will host blood drives. It really was a big impact when COVID hit and churches and schools got shut down because they are one of our biggest partners in blood collection. So we quickly had to find and pivot to see how could we still collect blood. Blood only has a shelf life of 45 days. So, and I mentioned it can't be manufactured. So we constantly have to be collecting blood. Each blood sample is tested at least 12 tests. We are still doing the COVID-19 antibodies test. And now from the beginning of when we started convalescent plasma to now, we no longer need people who have those antibodies to go back in and donate plasma. They can actually extract what they need from the blood donation that they collected. And that is being used for treatment for patients that are hospitalized with COVID. We delivered to 2,500 hospitals nationwide, and from our chapter and from our Yakima Blood Center, we supply about 22 to 30 hospitals with blood products. And this is just a little what I call Blood 101, just to give you an idea. Okay, manufactured 42 days. I thought made a mistake and said 45 on the shelf life. We need 31,000 donations every day, and one donation can save up to 3 lives. So every time that somebody does come in and donates that blood, we know that it can save up to 3 lives. And one accident victim can use 100 pints of blood. So again, just stressing how important it is. If someone is healthy and able to donate, we really encourage everyone to consider donating blood. So services to the armed forces. This is our oldest program. This is really when the Red Cross was founded on our services to the armed forces. And we provide support from enlistment all the way to retirement from the armed forces. So whether that is maybe a family who has a child who has just enlisted, is going to be starting with one of the military branches, and maybe they don't know what to expect. We go through and let them know what to expect. We also make sure they know that in the case of an emergency, how to contact the Red Cross, because the Red Cross is the only organization for emergency contact when someone is deployed or in another area serving, to be able to get to that person and be able to get them home if needed. We have several volunteers who actually have started volunteering with the Red Cross because they have their own experience where maybe a spouse was deployed and then needed to come home for an emergency, and within 48 hours Red Cross was able to connect and get that person on their way home. So emergency communications is a big piece. And then all the way to, I mentioned, Dawn, I mentioned this for you, the Hero Care Network. It's support that's available to our veterans and their families. A lot of people will call the Red Cross and ask for financial support, maybe with rental assistance through COVID. Most of our support is around disasters and home fires. However, our services to the armed forces has the Hero Care Network, where that is specifically for those veterans and their families. So when somebody calls for support, the first question I ask is whether or not they have military, because I know that there's additional resources and services that we can provide for them. So if you ever know of somebody who needs that support, you can always contact me. It's a little quicker with our local office than going online, which that is fine as well. And then now we have Joe too, and Joe's really going to be a leader in our services to the armed forces, and I know that we're going to get some great partnerships going, and he's going to do a lot of great work here locally. So feel free to reach out to us. And then the Red Cross has a lot of resources on hand. If you have a smartphone, there's a lot of apps that you can download, everything from first aid to your blood donor app. We also have the emergency app for where shelters are set up. recently when Texas was going through their disaster and they were setting up shelters. I know several families that have kids that are on missions in Texas. So I sent them that link and told them about the app, because you can download it, and depending on the area you're in, it will actually show you a map and show you where there's a Red Cross shelter and where you can get help. So the apps are really, really a great thing to utilize and have. So we have those apps that you can download. And then just finishing up, I just want to tell you a little bit about our Red Cross here at home. We are part of 235 U.S. chapters. Our, what we call CISO, it's our Central Southeastern Washington chapter. We actually have a little bit higher workforce than our national. We're about 95% here in our chapter. And we cover 9 counties. So here in the blue area here in Southeastern Washington, from Kittitas down to Adams, this is the area that we cover within our chapter. There used to be an office in each of the counties, and we had a lot more staff. When the Red Cross reorganized, it was specifically to be able to make sure that more of our efforts, more of our funds go to the mission out in the field, delivering those services to the people who need it. So it's a large area that we cover, but we have locals in each of our counties that are our volunteers who help us do that. And this is just a quick snapshot of what we do across our chapter. On average, we have about 190 families that receive disaster assistance, 450 smoke alarms that are installed. You see the services to the armed forces. Those are the cases that we open for veterans who have contacted us for support. We do a lot of blood donations in this chapter, and a lot of Red Cross training. And then the Homes Made Safer are that preparedness of making sure that we have gone through and helped them prepare with escape plans. Like I mentioned, we're in the midst of that Homes Made Safer now, and we'll be doing those virtual calls through June 30th. So I'll make sure that I get that information to you.